Welcome, everybody. We're on the next episode of the 80/20 Rockstars podcast. Today, we have Dan Harvey, which I would give him many titles. He's a dad. He's a real estate investor. He's a husband. He's been known as the pull-up king in certain Facebook groups. He's the leader of BRRRR, which is a real estate investing group in Philadelphia. We're fellow members of other groups, and very excited to have a chance to talk to you today about just investing, life, and the market and what's going on. So thanks for being on.
Thanks for having me, Rodney. I'm excited to be here. I love talking real estate. So
awesome. Same as well. And I'm going to switch our view to make sure it's the speaker view. There we go. So yeah, just wanted to get started. I know I feel like I've seen you all over the place, and some people probably know about your background, but for those of you who are meeting for the first time here, can you just give me a little bit of a where'd you come from, your background with SEPTA, how did you get up? And I'll start off by saying, Dan is an investor who focuses, I believe, on multifamily and mixed use investing in Philadelphia. A lot of the projects I've seen of yours are in West Philadelphia, ranging from small 3 to 4 units to very large properties. So with commercial spaces, lots of apartments. He's done large rehabs, he does development projects, so he has a lot of experience with multifamily real estate. So just to give people some context.
yeah, thanks. So I'm a Philly guy, born and raised in Southwest Philly. I went to Dobbins, which is a trade school, and through Dobbins, I was very fortunate, and through the trade I was in, they had a co-op program. So I was able to start working at SEPTA between my junior and senior year at Dobbins. Wow. And after I graduated Dobbins, I was hired at SEPTA full-time. So at 17, I was a union electrician working on the railroad. So I had that good job early. Yeah. So then that, quite frankly, was where that was the life I thought I was going to have. I was going to be at that job 40 years or so. It's still one of those jobs, few jobs where you can have that one job for your whole life, right? Most of the guys that were there when I was there are still there, and they plan on working there until they retire. So that was the thought process. I was doing the SEPTA thing. I was fairly young. I started a promotion business. You might have heard me talk about this in the past. I built that promotion business up from, we started off doing small parties to, we built it up so we were doing small stadium events. So we would do like 10,000 seater stadiums, bringing in rappers and selling tickets and stuff like that. And honestly, I thought that's how I was going to become rich. I thought it was going to be my path to wealth. That's not what happened, but that's what I thought was going to happen. And I was still fairly young. I was in my early 20s. And my mom, who is a real estate agent, but she's my mom, saw I was a young guy, and she didn't want me to do what young guys generally do when they make money, which is, blow it on whatever, right? A whole bunch of stuff, chasing women or whatever the case is, where you don't have anything to show for later on. So she was like, why don't you invest in real estate? Real estate was never even something I was thinking about. It wasn't like, I see people who actually come in, wanting to be in real estate. I never even considered it. And so I still didn't have any interest, but it was my mom. So I was like, well, I'll go out, I'll take a look. I'm not going to buy anything, but it'll make mom feel good and I can let her down later on. And I actually ended up, during that process of looking at real estate, I ended up purchasing my first property. I bought a bank owned duplex. And that really got me started. I had no idea what I was doing. I think I bought that for like $20,000 or something like that.
This is at what age?
I was 20, let's see, like 23 or 24.
Okay, cool.
23,
yeah,
24.
Really?
Yeah. So I bought it cash. I fixed it up. I sold it about a year and a half later for like 87.5 or something like like that. And I was like, damn, right? I was like, wow, I'm making money. I had no idea what I was doing. And like the next property I bought was a what we call house hacking, right? Where you live in one and you rent the other two. Now, just keep in mind, like these ideas were not floating around out there. To me, it just kind of made sense. I was like, oh, I can live in this one unit and I can rent these other two out, right? It's going to cover most of my costs. It was just, to me, it was just like kind of common sense. And I was still single. I was young. It was like a large apartment that I could live in. I could rent the other two. I was like, oh, this is a no-brainer. So I bought that for $76,000. It was in East Lansing, which is like a county outside of Philadelphia. It needed cosmetic work. I fixed up the other units. I met my wife. I moved out. The tenant that bought it after me purchased it from me for $180,000. I was like, damn. I'm like, you know what? I'm making money. I don't know what I'm doing. If I read some books, I may be dangerous, right? It was my thought process. And that's when I got serious about it. So like right before I turned 30, I decided that I was going to quit SEPTA when I was 35. And I only had one rental property at the time, which is the house that I grew up in. And so I started buying rental properties, and I ended up, I quit my job 3 days before my 35th birthday. So Christmas Eve of 2014. So I've been a full-time investor ever since.
Awesome. That's a great start. If you don't mind me asking, you mean Dobbins as in like 23rd and Lehigh or 22nd and Lehigh Dobbins?
22nd and Lehigh, that's it.
Yeah. My dad actually went there too.
Did he?
Yeah, I didn't realize it was a vocational school. I'll have to ask him. Yeah, I mean, he graduated a long time ago. It must have been 772. I don't know, a long time ago. So that's awesome though. So bought your first place when you were 23. Your mom got you into business, and you said you also met your wife during that time.
Yeah, I met my wife when I bought that house hacking property. So during that time frame.
Nice. And so fast forward, I guess, from 30 to 35, because I'm really curious to know the details about like setting a goal, saying you're going to quit your job means you probably have to have a certain amount of income. How the heck did you get there?
So what I did at the time was super. To me, I just did things to me that just made sense, right? So my thought process was I took whatever I was making at the time. I don't remember. It might have been like $1,000 a week or something like that. I'm not even sure. And I said, okay, I know that this is basically guaranteed, right? I work week, I get paid. With rentals, it's not guaranteed. So if I can make double what I'm making, net double, then that would make me feel comfortable with quitting. So I just like picked the number, right? And so what I did, again, this is 2010 was when I turned 30. So this was not a time where there wasn't a lot of like real estate groups, it certainly wasn't a social media presence. There was nobody teaching a BRRRR strategy, to buy, rehab, rent, refinance, and repeat. But that's what I was doing. But it just didn't have a type, right? And once I found out that banks did that by a total happenstance. Like I just didn't know these things existed. I bought a property, I fixed it up. Somebody told me that I could go to a bank. So I went to a credit union and I refinanced it. And they asked me how much I wanted to take out. And they told me I could take out up to a percentage of the value. They said up to 80%. I said, well, I'll take up to 80%. But in my mind, I thought it would be capped at whatever I had into the deal, right? That was just in my brain because, again, nobody was teaching me this. I'm just assuming they're not going to give me, I didn't even think about the fact of getting more than I put in. So I can't even think that I was like, oh, they're not going to give me more. It didn't even occur to me to think that thought. That's how foreign it was to me. And then I got the appraisal. They said, oh, yeah, we'll give you X amount. I was like, it's what I got to do. Like, oh, this is a thing that they'll do. And it was mind-boggling to me that this is a thing that they would do. And after that, it was a wrap. It was like, oh. And I will say that I started at a good time, right? So I definitely had some headwinds. It was after the collapse, and right, it was a ton of foreclosures. You didn't need any wholesalers. As long as you could just jump on the MLS, take your time, look at properties. You can make a lowball offer and still get it. And they were cosmetic rehabs. So I was going through painting, cabinets, not even cabinets all the time, sometimes flooring, cleaning it up, and then I would refinance out. So I would use my own cash to buy them and rehab them, and I would refinance, I would get cash again. I would just keep doing it. I didn't really understand about leveraging at the time, like taking that money and then buying 2 and 3 and all that sort of stuff. I would just take my own cash, I would do it, fix it up, and that's what I did. And I just like put my head down. That's all I did. And I was working a ton of overtime at the job. And I didn't raise my standard of living. So I didn't like go out and buy crazy things. I just kept my lifestyle very, very regular. Right. And so all of the extra income that I was making, I just put it right back in, put it right back in. And then one day I kind of looked up, I was like, man, like I'm actually making some real money.
Awesome. So, and this was mostly, I'm assuming it's like houses, duplexes, triplexes, right?
Yeah. So when I started off, it was mostly homes, mostly single family homes, right? I mean, that was just the most prevalent. And then one day, this is just how my life is. It's interesting. I was buying single families. I was knocking them out, and a 6-unit building came up in Sharon Hill, which is another little township that's right outside of Philly. And it was a large building with a parking lot and everything else. And it was $100,000. And I'm like, again, I had no mentor. Nobody was training me on this. I didn't know a thing about commercial real estate. I had no idea honestly, I had no idea how to even value the building. I just knew instinctively it's worth more than $100,000. Like it has to be, right? So I actually ended up getting it for $80,000. I didn't even pay $100,000. I got it for $80,000. That's crazy. Now here's an interesting story. So up to this point, I've only been using my own cash, as I was telling you. I didn't have enough cash to buy it and fix it up. So what I did was I went to my lender at the time. I said, hey, I found this deal. And I need cash to buy it and fix it up. He's like, well, we don't really do rehab loans. Well, I mean, that's what I need. So he was like, well, let us think about it. This is a small credit union. And so the guy came back to me and he was like, Dan, we're like on the fence with this. We're like 50-50 on, whether we should do this or not. I said, I get it. I said, well, I've been banking with you guys for years. We've done a lot of loans. I've always paid on time, always been a good client. So I'll say, if you're going to bet on anybody, it should be me. All right. And the guy paused for a second. He said, you know what? You're right. Just like that. You know what? You're right.
Okay.
So we're going to do the loan. And the reason why I bring that up is that's the power of relationship. Number one, the power of relationship and the power of doing what you say you're going to do. That's opened so many doors, and we can get into that a little bit later. That's 100% real story. And here's the interesting part that I didn't know. They didn't have a rehab program. They didn't really know how to do it. They literally set this thing up for me. They brought in a guy who set up the draws. I had no idea what I was doing. So I remember I was doing some work. I had all these receipts and everything. And I emailed this guy all these receipts. And it's funny how the universe just kind of looks out. The guy called me, he's like, listen, I don't need all these receipts. He says, all I need you to do is just tell me what you did, walk me through the property, tell me how much it cost. And the guy met me at the property and walked me through it. It was a whole lesson. Yeah. The whole lesson that I learned, he kind of showed me how to set up the draws and how to do it. He's like, yeah, you don't need to send me all that. I don't need them. And I was like, oh, okay. And yeah, man, it was amazing. Actually, now talking about it, kind of getting goosebumps, thinking about just like how crazy I was in the bank, in the lender was for
It,
lending me the money. You know, it's crazy.
it's worth like highlighting that and just like emphasizing, because like I actually just had a similar experience like the past 3 months, as we were talking about before. Like we've kind of taken that next step, which is super uncomfortable. We've been doing the houses, duplexes, triplexes, sold almost everything, and getting this whole self-storage. And I just had kind of the same thing. One not as dramatic, but like the same hard money lender that we use for all these houses. He lent us. We had to get an appraisal and all that, but he lent us on a self-storage with really just he's like, okay, it's you. As long as the appraisal makes sense, that's really, and you think you can make it work, that's really all I care about. And that was it in December. We finally closed that. And then the second one, we just bought a second one last week. And also, like, we were waiting on a couple settlements. We're also short on cash. I was like, oh crap. And then I thought that the first lender was going to come through, but he was like, I want to overextend. The second was in Chester. This is a really big loan I gave him the first one. And silly me, I waited until like 3 weeks before settlement to have that conversation with him. And so to really like ask him, I just assumed he would do it. But then, so I'm freaking out. Like, we have, 15 grand down in deposit. And like, I really want to get this place. The numbers make sense. And lo and behold, the guy who ended up coming through was the listing agent who lent us the money. We sent him, like just a simple personal financial statement, whatever, but like, he didn't need to do that. It was just through the short relationship we had built, because he was listing in here for the first transaction that we just closed. Through that short relationship and like him helping us and like all the conversations, it meant that much. Like, he was like, he had the funds, and he's like, I see what you're doing. You're performing on this one. I'm just going to give you the money. And you would appreciate this. Like, he lent us 90% of the purchase price and almost all the rehab on a self-storage deal based on not a lot, but the relationship. That's pretty crazy. Yeah. So it's really nuts. Like, it really means so much, relationships.
So relationships are everything. I mean, it's people don't understand how powerful they are, but also, number one, how you conduct yourself so that people will trust you. Because people get a feel for you right from the beginning, right? If you're somebody that they trust or don't trust, if there's somebody, all the numbers and stuff, like, that's important. But really, especially when it's smaller lenders and it's more relationship driven than product driven. And when it has to do with private investors, it's totally about you, right? You can have the best numbers in the world. If they feel like you're kind of like shady, like, they won't do it. But also, if you're solid, they will absolutely do it. I've had experiences where I had a private investor, and I remember they had lent me on a couple of deals. We had done deals, and I went to an event, a real estate event. And I just happened to see him. I didn't know they were there. Him and his wife. Hey, what's going on? He had a buddy with him. When I tell you, this conversation was all of about 2 minutes. Hey, this is so-and-so. This is Dan. We put some money into his deals. He's a really good guy. Hey, how you doing? Another deal came up. That guy that was there, that I was talking to, he put $300,000 into the deal.
Wow.
I never talked to him again after that. So it's based off the strip of the guy that I was talking to, and then just kind of him and I just having that quick little conversation, whatever it was that we talked about. And I mean, he's done, a ton since then. But so people really, I think they overestimate how much like their understanding of the numbers is, which is, you need to understand the numbers. But who you are as a person is, I think, so much more important.
Oh yeah, and your process, and so that's awesome. So okay, so since then, so it was 2015, correct, when you stepped away from SEPTA?
Yeah, right at the end of 2014. Yep.
Gotcha. And then obviously you've grown and started to do larger multifamily projects. So like, what does your business look like, your portfolio, or like what kind of stuff are you working on today, and how are you set up?
So, so what I did after I left SEPTA, I actually started doing flips, which I don't like doing flips. I don't. And so I moved away. I thought that's what I was going to do because I thought I would need the income. That was more fair than anything else. I really didn't. I had enough rental income coming in. So then I moved back into buying multifamily properties. So I was still doing mostly residential triplexes, 4-unit buildings. I never bought a lot of duplexes, to be honest with you. And then I got more into commercial real estate. So that 6-unit building I was telling you about, I'm still working when I purchased that. I'm not sure if I was working or not, but I started buying more of those after I left SEPTA. And so that's what I was doing. I was buying 6-unit buildings, 5-unit buildings, 6-unit buildings. And I would buy them vacant. And I would fix them up. And so that was going good. Around 2017, kind of like the party stopped. It was difficult for me to find vacant existing multifamily properties. And if you found them, the banks were basically asking retails for the numbers because a lot of investors started coming back into the game. Right? A lot of people got wiped out in 2008. So a lot of guys were like licking their wounds for years. Yeah. So around 2016, 17, really people started coming back into the business strong, and there was a lot of capital. There was a lot more hard money, and so things just started to pick up. So banks were no longer selling things at deep discounts, and so I needed to shift my strategy. So I shifted my strategy to a strategy that I call multifamily conversions. And what that is I identify properties that have advantageous zoning, and I convert them into commercial multifamily properties by right? And so like that was my niche, and I didn't have a lot of competition. It had a lot of good benefits. It has some drawbacks too, but mostly the benefit of it is I would buy a property from whatever the seller, they're selling it to me as a single family property, or they're selling it to me as a garage, or whatever the case is, but I'm underwriting it as a 6-unit building, a 5-unit building, right? And so it opens up the numbers a lot for me. And one of the other things that happened that some of your listeners may not know is that once you have a commercial property, it really unlocks the value, right? Because you're no longer handcuffed by the neighborhood itself, right? So say, for instance, I can make a beautiful 4-unit building, and I've done this in the past, beautiful, really nice. And even the appraiser is like, man, this is nice, but the highest comp I can find is this. I mean, I'm going to give you this comp, but that's it, because it's residential. So the value comes from other similar buildings in that area. But when you have a commercial property, it's valued by the income. So the income that I creates the value. And so I'm no longer I'm not, stuck in that area, right? It's not about comps as far as what it's sold, it's comps as far as what's called cap rates. I don't know if we have time to get into all that, but that's where the valuation really comes from. So I'm able to unlock tremendous value and get really good appraisals in areas where you otherwise would not be able to get those numbers.
Yeah, I think it's worth we don't have to give any real example. There's plenty of real examples I'm sure you could give, but like it could be a 10, 20, 30% different. You could have a building that's the same square footage, like say 3,500 square foot building that happens to be like 4 large units, versus a 3,500 square foot building that happened to be like 5 1-bedrooms, and the value could be same square footage, almost same rents even, but the value could be a lot different. And I think about, I know you didn't turn this into 5 units, but I was just thinking about the property that I sold you on Media. I think you made that 4 units, right?
No,
Maybe it's
5.
It's 5. Okay, so that's a perfect example. Right off 55th Street a couple of years ago. I actually sold a property to Dan, and we weren't sure what we were going to do with it. We bought it from a family that just had it as literally like a duplex. And this is a great example because the appraisal values for multifamily around there probably still are not that high. I was like, I'm going to put all this work into it. It might be worth like 280, maybe 300. However, I think how many units did you turn that into?
5, and that appraised for like 680.
So that is literally, it can be that big of a difference.
It's a massive difference.
Huge.
The difference, the reason why I enjoyed it, I like doing those so much. So number one, you get the big equity spread. Now it can be a difficult build, right? Just dealing with Philadelphia and all that. It's not a simple build, but the equity that you gain is just tremendous.
Right.
And so, excuse me, though I enjoy those, the ones that I like even better are properties that are existing. So like I bought a building of a 59th Market where I bought it from an investor got in over his head, no contractors, the whole nine. And he needed to get out. And he had it as 4 apartments and 1 retail space.
Okay.
And no, he had it as 4 apartments and 1 retail space. The zoning allowed, well, with this zoning actually is a bit better zoning. I could have did just 6 residential. In fact, speaking of it, maybe I still will. But I turned it into 5 apartments and 1 commercial. And so I think I picked it up from him for 160. Now he already did some of the work, but he had to get out of it. So I closed in like 30 days. So he had to get out.
Sure.
I picked it up from him for 160. I put 120 into it. That project took a year, and that appraised for same thing, $680,000. Wow. And that was a lower cap rate. If I didn't really know what I know now. If I really got the cap rate I should have really had, they had me at an 8.5. Really should have been more like a 7. It would have been high. But even at an 8.5, in 1 year, I was into it for $280,000 and then appraised for $680,000. So it's like, and the cash flow crazy. But I was, on that, like the cash out of that deal was like $200,000 and something. Then that's after I recouped my money. So it's like it's a tremendous strategy if you can execute.
Yeah, and that's the punchline. Like when you just said, having a tremendously higher appraisal value is awesome because like you can, number one, you can pull all of the money back that you originally put in, and then a lot, right? You obviously want to assess the risk and make sure that like the value, you're getting enough rent, so it's not going to be too tight that you're going to pull out an extra 100,000 and your payment is so big you can't service the debt. But that allows you to go so much faster than if you're, if it's zoned. If you would have turned that Media Street into a 4 unit, you would have maybe no, you wouldn't have even got your money back. There's no way for how much you wouldn't have.
It would have been tight because you still have to do the same amount of work.
Right.
You still have the same, the same things that you have to put in there. So it's like you're saving that much money on doing the rehab. You're just not getting the value. So that's one thing I teach my students is like, just because you can do something, that doesn't mean you should. Right. So you have to underwrite the deals so that you understand that what you do and makes sense. You don't want to do all that work for no reason.
Yeah.
It just doesn't make sense.
Awesome. So today, are you focusing on more on some like larger stuff, or like what is your, I don't know, current project load kind of look like?
Sure. So I mean, I pivoted. I pivoted back in 2022 because you could just see the writing on the wall. I mean, rates were going up really quickly. So My projects are predicated on my ability to sort of predict where the rates are going to be, so I could, model it out, meaning I can underwrite the deal and have an idea on the back end where rates are going to be. But rates are going up so high for me at the time, it's like you don't know where rates are going to end at. So how could you, within any reasonable idea, really model where the rates are going to be? So I stopped buying big projects, right? Wrapped up the big projects, locked in longer term
Lower interest
debt on those projects. I was fortunate to be, so between 2021 and early 2022, I locked in lower rates. And so what I'm doing now personally is selling off some of the portfolio that is really not that great, right? As far as the returns is much better, I take that capital and reallocate it somewhere else. I'm still buying deals, but I'm buying deals that are not heavy rehabs. So like, for instance, I just picked up a 5-unit building. It was an existing 5-unit building. 2 of the units were vacant. 2 of the units were occupied, and it has a retail piece to it. And so the apartments needed what I would call like a heavy turnover. We did floors, we did painting, we added cabinets, like we did the bathroom. They look really good, but we did both units in 1 month. Just through those units done. Now we'll go down into the retail space, fix that up. Now there's 2 existing tenants in there. Trying to get them out. Their spots are just pretty nasty and everything else. So once they're out, we will turn that. And so you're talking about all in, we should be in and out of there in 6 months, all depending on how long it takes me to get those tenants out. We'll be in and out of there in 6 months. I know the rates won't go but so high in that time frame. Yeah. Now, the projects I was doing previously were taking me 12 to 18 months, right? Like just doing the architectural piece of it takes 3 months, 4 months sometimes, right?
at least.
I say architectural approval could be 4 or 5 months. I mean, that's the reality of it, right? Some people give some time frames. I'm like, I don't know how you do it, but in my world, that's what it was taking. Right? Maybe some people are just better at it.
I need to find those people too.
yeah. But in the real world that I was living in, and I think we were fairly efficient with how we did things and had really good relationships, it still took, a good, like I say, 4 months, sometimes 5 months to get everything approved. And that's before you start doing any work. You can't really do anything. You do a demo, right?
And that's without zoning, by the way, for those who are listening. This is not like getting zoning. You're talking by right, just getting
by right. Yeah. And then that's a good point. That's a good point, which is why I only did by right projects. This has nothing to do with the variance. So if you have a variance piece to it, you got to add another 3 months on top of that, possibly, and with the potential that it could not be approved at all. So you have that there. But yeah, so I decided that right now it's not worth the risk, and that there are going to be, in my opinion, sellers who are going to want to be getting rid of older properties, probably tired of Philadelphia, like a lot of us, and there'll be opportunities there. So for the foreseeable future, I am going to stick to those. Now, I own projects already that I just haven't started. So I just own them. And so I think when it becomes more advantageous, I'll go back to them. And I think that's something that people, not everybody has the luxury. I'll say, I get that. They may not have the luxury to just kind of sit on it, right? There are some projects I'm selling because I don't want to just keep saying, I don't want to keep paying to hold them. So one of the things that I was preaching about early 2022, and I'd love to get your feedback on it, is I was telling people, listen, you got to pivot. You have to pivot because things are changing. If you're stuck with this idea of, oh no, you can just keep going, and it's like, you kidding me? Like these are economic forces that are far beyond our control. Yeah. you should pivot now, and not wait until it's too late. And so I see a lot of people now running into some issues because, I don't know if you saw it. I did a couple stories about the BRRR strategy. Did you see that?
I didn't.
No.
Facebook.
I did it on Instagram.
Oh, Instagram.
And like people were freaking out about it because I am a proponent of the BRRR strategy, but it has to make sense.
You got to be real careful today.
Yeah, you had to be. It's not that it can't work, but here's the problem. The problem as it was in 2022. Now things are starting to change, and you were asking me how I feel about things, and I said, well, I think things are starting to kind of normalize a little bit, so we can get into that. But whenever you have a change in the market, the change in the individual players in the market never happens as quickly as the change in the market.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning, okay, rates go up. If I'm a seller and you're a seller, let's say, and you sold your property last month for $100,000, but rates were at like 4%. Now here I am, I'm like, okay, I only sold his for that. I'm going to try to get 110 because everybody's always going to try to get them, right? All they see is dollar signs. They don't see the market is shifting. Like you see the Fed saying they're raising rates. Oh, I'm going to get 110. All right, this is a hot area. Okay. Now you throw it up there. Anybody that's a reasonable investor that's watching the other influences outside of just what they want, like, well, okay, let me see how things are going to go. And so maybe there's no offers, or the offers are so low because people are like, well, I don't know where this is going to land, so I'm not going to give you the same thing I gave Rodney. So it was worth 100,000, maybe now it's worth 80. Like, man, these guys are trying to steal from me. I'm not, and they'll be like belligerent because they think somebody's trying to steal from them. And it only gets worse because rates go higher, and you're like, okay, when rates were at 4%, maybe 5%, maybe people were modeling that. And it's like, okay, it made sense to pay 100,000 because I know that it would service the debt and I could buy it or whatever the case is. But now rates are at, say, 7%, 8% in some cases. Even I've seen high. Okay, now you were lucky when I offered you 80. Now I can only offer you 70, maybe 65.
Yeah.
And I think that realization that, okay, the 100 is not coming back, at least not right now. So if you don't need the money right now, then you don't sell. But if you need the money, right? Some people need the money. If you need the money, you got to sell it.
I agree with a lot of what you said. Like, we also had the thought early on, separate from like the thoughts about the market. I had also had this thought it's been for a couple of years now that like I wanted to transition and get out of some of our stuff and get into a commercial. So that was number one. But early last year, like you said, I saw the writing on the wall. Like, I think we're really things are starting to get too ridiculous. We're in a 4-bedroom house and like at 42nd and Girard or whatever, like would sell for like $350. I'm like, this the numbers were getting so high. So like we decided to sell everything we had, and we're lucky enough to get out of probably a little bit more than half of it before like the end of the summer, early fall. I feel like right around around October, November, like how you were saying, like, so there'd be a house, some of our houses, like one, I'm thinking about one on 41st in Cambridge we had, like, I was sure when we were through that working on it, I was like, we're definitely going to get on the block. Al had sold like 2 new construction for like 350. So I'm like, we're going to get like 300. This is the same size. It's not new. Super nice. We're going to get 300 for it. And then in a very short time period, rates went from like 3.25, 3.5 to 6, like 2-3 months later. And like you said, like people don't, I think a lot of people ignore the math. Like that means the mortgage payment went up by 40%. 40%. It goes from like 1,600 to all of a sudden you might be paying 2,200, whatever. It's a really big difference. So I don't think we really lost on anything. Might have came really close to breaking even on some of them, but I sold that house for 240. And I thought I was gonna get 300. So I like you said, I think it may have slowed down a little bit. We just got a good offer on one of the last few we have. triplex on Belmont, for which I thought we might have to get it drop into the high threes. We got an offer in like the low to mid fours, which I was really surprised on. So it does feel like maybe this is just spring starting, that like it does feel like the change is starting to slow, and the difference in the opinions of like buyers and sellers, the delta, the sellers are finally starting to like accept the reality, and I guess the buyers are accepting the reality, like, hey, I might pay more than what I think now, but some of the places I'm selling, it's like, hey, I think that I people locking in stuff for 7.5. But like, hey, maybe in a couple of years I'll be able to refinance it. It'll be an okay return now, but maybe I can refinance in a couple of years at 6 or 5.5 if the rates drop. Then it gets better. So that's kind of what I've seen about how some people are justifying certain things.
Sure. And rates will drop again. I don't think they'll drop back to what they were. Jordan, I mean, we had a lot of artificial interference, and so I don't think that is a realistic thing. But if they drop, you're absolutely right. If they drop down into the fives, well, at least you own the real estate. Because if you wait, all that's going to happen, you may wait 2 years later, you don't have the real estate, you don't have any equity in it, you don't have any equity at all, and all that's going to happen as soon as rates go down, it's going to, prices are going to go back up again. So you're going to find yourself in the same conundrum. If anything, right now, you at least have the opportunity to get some concessions, right? Yes. And so I have stuff on the market, so I get it, right? And I understand. Like there are some things I went back against my better nature. I did a flip at the worst moment, and now I'm like, I know better than this. Now I'm just like, you know what? I'm going to take a little bit of a loss on this thing. I just want it done. I want to just get it off the books and move on with my life. I knew I shouldn't have been doing it in the first place. It's like one of these things where I knew I shouldn't. I knew I shouldn't have been doing it, and here it is. But that's the psychology of the business, and I think that's what, as people get more experience, this is why people need mentors. This is why they need stuff like this to understand. Like there's numbers to this, and then there's a psychology to it. Yeah. And you kind of have to go through this to sort of see it. So, like I said, I saw it 2022. I remember, and like second quarter, April, May, I was like, yeah, man, I mean, the Feds is going to shoot this thing up. I'm not grabbing anything else. It's going to be long-term. I finished up, and it was just thankful, really just great. Like I had finished up all the large projects, refied, tied in. I was still in the fours for the commercial stuff, still in the fours. And I was like, yes. And so, I was like, well, let me just see. And the only thing I picked up a property because I felt like there was going to be some people who needed to be out, who need to get out. And an agent brought me a deal. This guy had this large mixed-use property that was in decent shape, wasn't a full gut, needed to get out. Wanted 110, which is already a good deal, and I offered him 100, and he took it. I said, listen, who cares what the rate is? No matter what, but there's very little chance the rate's going to get so high I can't make that thing cash flow. If I can't make that cash flow, basically real estate is stopped, right? So on those, and that's what I was just kind of cherry picking deals.
I think that's smart. What do you think is like the biggest? I feel like people have an idea of what who haven't gotten into investing yet. And I know you have courses and run boot camps and tours and all sorts of programs. Like, what do you think is the biggest difference between what people think real estate investing is and rehabbing, developing projects and taking things and doing everything you do, what they think it is versus like what it actually is? What's the biggest myths, I guess, that people have about? I personally have one, but I'll wait to.
Yeah, I mean, so social media hasn't helped.
No.
There's certainly this idea that if you get into real estate, it's going to definitely make you financially free. And the truth of the matter is, people definitely lose money all the time. I know people definitely lose money all the time. So that's a reality. And in that, it's going to take some perseverance, right, to really get on track. So one of the things that I talk about, because it's this idea, people get caught up in the bricks of it all and everything else. So I say, let's just take a step back from that. Let's think about what you're trying to achieve. What you're trying to achieve is financial independence or financial freedom. Very few people ever get financially free, meaning that their passive income outpaces their monthly expenses, whatever that is. Very few people get there. That's different than somebody who is a high wage earner, right? They have to keep working to keep doing whatever they're doing. Somebody who is financially free, the passive income covers all of their expenses. There's a reason why very few people actually do that, because it takes work and it takes discipline and it takes structure. So the idea that you're going to get into this and you're just going to happen, it's going to be easy, is a ridiculous. You set yourself up to fail, right? It is not easy, but it's certainly possible. It is achievable. So I want to make that clear. I'm not saying it like it's not achievable, but you have to go into it with a certain respect for what you're trying to achieve, right? You got to respect that most people never get there, ever, until they turn whatever 65. And some people don't even get it then, and that's relying on the government, right? But for you to be in control of your own destiny. And the other thing is, like, they've set these ridiculous ideas of you got to like be a billionaire. Mm-hmm. If you make $5,000 a month passively and your expenses are $3,000, you're financially free.
Yep.
All right, you're financially free. You made it. Right. Yep. So I think the idea of a lot of what we see, and I get it, is marketing. I've had a difficulty with it. Because it just doesn't resonate with me. The whole, and I guess I could have done it a long time ago, stand next to a Lamborghini or outside of a jet or something like this, but I don't know. It's just not what I stand for. And not that I'm some perfect, I'm not this idealistic person, but I think it does not what I stand for. Like, you would never see me like that regularly. You see me, you know what I mean? Like, I don't need to have stacks of money by me or whatever the case is. Like, I'm comfortable in my own skin. I just want to let people know that you can be a regular person. Like, I was a blue collar 9-to-5 worker and I figured it out. Right. And you can too, without all the other stuff. Right. That they act like you have to do. But no, I'd be interested to hear your opinion. I know this sun is killing me. It keeps
yeah, I see it.
I keep trying to run from it, but it's like it's bothering me.
I think I agree with a lot of what you said, and there's so many things out there that make it seem like that you have to change your lifestyle and become fancier than But what I was thinking of. I thought of two things when you were speaking. One is definitely people not respecting how much time, energy, and emotional ups and downs there is in trying to figure all this out. And also, like what we were talking about right before we started recording, is it takes an enormous amount of energy to get your systems up and running so that this becomes anything that even resembles the word passive. Like, I don't like the word passive that much, because I feel like what most people connotate that with is like, the tenants are going to pay and the manager's going to manage it and I'm just going to collect checks. That's not how it works. Yeah. That's not how it works. In theory it is, but like most property management companies will not manage it anywhere, maybe not anywhere. They're not going to manage it as well as you are. They're not going to they're not going to look for the same quality tenant. I mean, yes, they'll do it maybe 70 or 80% as well as you will. But if they're not going to watch your money as much as you would, because it's your money. And if you're not careful, even while you're doing this, and if you get a small or medium-sized portfolio, like if you start getting it, if you're not careful with your expenses, they can get out of control. And then all of a sudden you're not making anywhere near as much as you thought. So yeah, those are my two thoughts. Like, it takes an enormous amount of energy to get the systems in place so that you can take a step back, and then is it really passive? Like, yes, you can get down to maybe it only takes you're only looking at things an hour or a couple hours a week or a couple hours a month, but you still got to manage and make sure you're keeping whoever's looking after your wealth or portfolio, you got to like keep them accountable. Basically, that's the biggest thing we've seen. Like, as soon as you let the property management company like handle all the maintenance and do everything, you're going to start looking at your statements. And I'm saying, like, wait a minute, like literally like the toilet was leaking, and why did that cost me like $317? Wait a second, the roof leak. Why you were recommending that I replace the whole roof that I just got a warranty on when it just started leaking? Like, I know I have a warranty, but you don't know that. So those little things have really gotten to me like over the years. It's just it is what it is. It's part of what we do, but it's like I think most people don't take that into account when they're starting here. It's not just set it and forget it, like in that sense. So
yeah, it's not even close.
No.
Yeah, it's not even close. And and obviously, like I said, how people sell it and what it is. And you just discussed the tenant management. You didn't even discuss rehabs. So
yeah, didn't even start about that. Yeah. You can hire a contractor and they're gonna rehab the house for you. Oh my God. That's so completely false. Like,
yeah,
it's completely false. It's true, but you're gonna pay to really get someone who's gonna rehab that whole house for you and is really an expert. You might pay 25% or 35% more than what it really costs you. Yeah.
It would eat away almost any profit that you had in the deal. Any of that equity would really go to that contractor.
Mm-hmm.
And it's some ways rightfully so, some ways some people are kind of getting over. But to think that, hey, I'm gonna hand you the keys for a shell, and then you hand it back to me, like I put a tenant in there, and you think you're not gonna sweat at all, especially going through Philadelphia. Forget about it. You have to pay for that because somebody still has to go through that aggravation. And so there's a value to that, and sometimes until you go through it, you don't really understand it. With everything that it entails, you don't know how many people I get constantly, because they also get sold the idea, oh, you can be your own GC, but you can absolutely be your own GC. And they have all these ideas of how much money they're going to save. They wind up saving nothing. They almost always wind up spending more money, and they calling me after it's all just, every sub under the roof done burnt them, because they know you don't know what you're doing. Going through some weekend course is not the same thing as actually going through the trenches and understanding the process, understanding how to protect yourself, understanding how to structure things. And then by the time they beat you up so bad, then you finally go, okay, all right. It's almost like they get beat into submission. And I just wish people would just be honest. I'm like, yeah, you can do it. But if you work a full-time job and that's what you do, and you can't really pay attention to what's going on here, or you've never really ran a process, especially a full gut rehab, oh my God, they're going to take you for a ride.
Oh yeah.
And like I said, any money you thought you were going to save by doing it on your own, gone.
Gone. I think as long as as long as people are setting the right expectations with themselves, like if you have an extra 20 hours a week and you're willing to learn and understand that nobody ever does anything they say they're going to do in the contracting world, then awesome. Like, it's great. And I've always been a big fan of, again, that's if you have the time, GCing at least your first few projects, because that delta that you're saving, you can pay the right electrician $13,000 instead of $10,000, who is actually going to like get it done in time and have less headaches. And you can pay a little bit more for, I think, the better quality subs when you're saving. But it's definitely not for everybody, especially if you don't have enough time. So,
or I think that first time, in my opinion, you need somebody over your shoulder, because even if you have the time, you don't have the expertise. How would you know if it was done right?
Right, you have to pace. I mean, like, either paying, I think also paying for someone's time is like very, very underrated. Like paying, if you someone like, I don't know, ourselves or an experienced investor, like I think it's very underrated to take someone and be like, hey, I will pay you $1,000 to come meet with me for like, just do a walkthrough for 2 hours and please tell me like, what should I look out for? What are the challenges I'm gonna face? Like, I would take that deal. Like, I mean, and most people are happy to do it, you know. I think that should be like a strategy that a lot of people employ, just paying for the right people's time. Same thing with paying for the right subs to come out and give quotes like, hey, I'll pay you 500, 250, say I'll pay you $250 if you come just spend an hour and like with any sub, an electrician, a framer, whatever. Forget if you use them or not. You can learn so much doing that, spending a little bit of money intelligently.
Yeah, well, what they say, penny wise, pound foolish. You know, sometimes people don't see the value in it until after they've been beat hard enough.
Yeah.
Because just really, and you and I know this is not even to be scary. Like one mistake with a contractor, blow that little few bucks, you could have had somebody come in, teach you how to write a proper scope of work, teach you how to, like, what contracts you should actually be having to actually tie up your contractor. You know, all sorts of things, how to write a proper payment schedule. So all sorts of things that if you don't know, you just don't know. Or if you're just taking a contractor, oh, this is my cousin and my cousin's buddy. And I'm like, oh, you already know how that's going to end, you know.
Yeah.
And you know, and you try to tell them, but it's hard, right? Because they haven't been hit yet, and so they think that close relationship is going to save them. And it rarely ever does. And I think some people lose sight of the fact you're still investing in this is a large investment. And so to think that you don't need some sort of guidance is, mind-boggling, especially if it's fairly cheap, as in comparison to the investment itself.
Yeah.
So, but a lot of people just, I don't get it. It's hard to see the value because they haven't been hit yet.
And I have one last thought on this before I move on to the next question. Like I'm doing this, I'm applying that to what I'm doing right now. Like we have a few people, one guy in particular, who he is very experienced with self-storage. They own and manage 20 something facilities. And it's like, whenever I feel like and we're getting to that point right now, since we're getting things up and running and we've had it for a few months, I'm like, you know what? And he's willing to, hey, I'll spend an hour of my time with you at any point for $250. That is, this project is more than $1 million, the first one. That's that return is 100x, 1,000x.
Yeah.
The things
it's a no-brainer.
No-brainer.
I mean, honestly, if I didn't even have much to even ask, I would just do it. Number one, just to show value, man. Somebody like that is so valuable, right? And this is what people just they can only think about the dollar, but that's a mindset, right? And I get that. You got to get on that mindset. $250, man. If I had a half a question, let's hop on. Listen, I appreciate you. So here, let's I have some questions about some things, and the other thing is when you're going into like a new endeavor like that, you don't even know what you don't know. Sometimes you don't even know the questions to ask. That's how green you are with some of this stuff, and it doesn't matter. It's not about the person. It's just how the process works. If you've never done it before, you don't have the experience to draw upon to necessarily ask all the right questions. You may ask the questions that are apparent to you, but there are questions that's not even apparent to you yet because you haven't done it.
Oh yeah. Like I think during our last call, like we were trying to figure out like the one of the properties we bought, it had some previous construction from the seller. They had put up a bunch of cinder block walls, and I'm like, should I make the roof like this or take this and try and tie it in? He's like, yeah, no, you should tear all that down and just buy storage containers or do that. And you just introduce something like, oh God, I didn't even think to ask that, and it just came naturally to him. So I'm on board with that. Last couple of questions. How do you manage, because you have a lot going on. You have a whole family, you stay in shape, you have a whole real estate business. Like, what's the greatest, like, what challenges do you have with just time management? How in the world do you manage like raising kids and, and having family time and managing your projects and your portfolio and all that?
I just let my kids be wild. And,
And how many, you have 3 children, right?
I have 2. I have
Two, okay.
I have my daughter and my son. So a couple of things. Number one is, structure. I'm a big believer in structure. So and I have routines. So one thing, I get up early in the morning, every morning, not every morning, 5 days out of the week, I get up, I go exercise, right? So I'm up like 4:45.
Mm-hmm.
And, I meditate for a little bit, and then I'm at the gym by like 5:45, right? The other thing is that's sort of, and it's important to me. So that's something that has to be important to you. So like staying physically in shape to me is important. Spending time with my family, that is important. So you got to do it like you do everything else. You got to, basically build it into your schedule, right? Or else it will fall behind everything else. And again, I don't say that as if I have some perfect system, but it is important for me. I have no desire to make all the money in the world and my kids not know who I am or not have a relationship. To me personally, it's just not working. And everybody has their own thing. It's not even close for me. Now on the business side, it's a bit different. The business side, it's a couple of things you have to be able to do. You have to be able to delegate, right? So, and then you have to have systems and processes. Excuse me. And we talked about this a little bit early on. Most people run their businesses like a hobby. So they're basically recreating every time something happens, you got to stop and think about how to handle it, right? Versus there's already something in place, right? So I try to have a SOP for everything, right? A standard operating procedure for almost everything you can think of, checklist for almost everything you can think of, especially tasks that we have to do over and over again, right? We're gonna go down this. It makes it easier, not just in your life, but it makes it easier in your business because you won't always have the same staff. So you may have somebody who is a good VA or a good whatever the case is, right? But if all they did was they have their way of doing things and you have no idea what it is, because it's almost impossible. You don't know everything that they do. If they were to up and leave tomorrow, you got to start all over again. You understand how terrifying it is? And you have a business in place and basically it was all running through them. No. We need to have procedures for everything. We need to have a manual where all of those procedures go. So that way, if you want to move on, God bless you. I wish you the best. We're going to take that manual. We're going to give it to the next person. Here's what you do. You read through this manual. If you have any questions from the manual, then we'll go through. And that takes time. A lot of times people don't want to spend that time because they don't see the immediate benefit. And it doesn't have like an immediate benefit, but it has a long-term benefit, right? Where you can actually grow a business. Otherwise, you're going to be handcuffed to what you can personally do at any given time or draw upon on your brain. It's like there's only so much brain power you got for that. And some of us are really good at it, but it's much easier to have systems and processes in place.
On that note, that was one of the other things I want to ask. What is it? Because I feel like people have impressions of like nobody ever talks about the things that they're not good at and like how they compensate for it. Like, what are some of the things that maybe something that you're not good at that you figure out a way to systematize? Like, hey, I hate doing this, and this is how it still gets done. So,
Yeah, I mean, that's a long list of things I don't like to do. So, so like, I like looking at properties. I like evaluating properties. I like those sort of things. I don't love social media, so I have somebody to do all those sort of things. I don't love making phone calls to a bunch of places and setting up schedules. So I have, a VA doing all of those things. I don't love the actual construction piece of it. So I have project managers that actually run the day-to-day operations. So that's how I do things, and then I can focus on tasks that make me money. And that's the idea, right? You can do a lot of things, but most things don't make you money. And I think that's a mindset shift that people have to think about, because most of us come from, let's say, the lower income or middle income backgrounds, where the idea is do as much as you can do on your own. And that's very limiting, right? Because there's only so much you can really do, and there's only so much you can do well. And so there's only so much you can lower expenses, right? But there is no limit to how high you can raise your profits. So, okay, yeah, I mean, at some point, I can't lower the expenses much more, but I can make more money, and I can make more money if I'm free to think of ideas that actually make me more money versus, it's shoveling, it's snowing. Let me go grab my shovel and go shovel 30 properties. Like, okay, yeah, what did I saved? I don't even know what that is, right? Whatever's in the budget for that, I saved that. I didn't make any more money that day. Or I could be home, writing an ebook, create another course, find another property. It could be anything. It could be anything that, number one, I enjoy a lot more than shoveling, right? And that's going to make me a lot more money than what I save shoveling snow. So that's a mindset shift for people. Some people have to really wrap their minds around what that looks like, and just understanding that the other way is going to limit you. There is no doubt about that. Yeah. I mean, it's like undeniable. I've met guys who I bought properties from that were like in their 60s and 70s. Oh, you're going to hate having to climb up on the roof and clear out the gutter. And I'm like, and I'm a respectable dude. So I'm like, oh yeah. I'm like, dude, I'm not doing that now. And it's not that I'm too good for it. It just, what sense does it make for me come all the way down here and clean out a gutter? Get the gutter cleaning guy to clean out the gutter. Let him make this money.
Yeah, it's one of those eternal lessons that, like, it never. Sometimes you got to remind yourself. I still have to remind myself of that sometimes with some, like, I was telling you before, like I've got more transactions going on than I have. And yesterday, I forget what I was sitting doing. It was like I was sitting in front of the computer, falling asleep in front of DocuSign, and then I woke up. I was like, what am I doing? Why am I not hiring a transaction management company to? I had them do the one-sided transaction, but I'm like, do I want to pay an extra $100? It was like $375 versus $250, and I'm like, when you come from that, like, I'm like, God, that extra $125, I want to save that. And then as I'm falling asleep, it was like, what the hell am I doing? No, this is like the last night. So I just had to remember, like, no, I should take the next 6 months, give them everything, and then maybe evaluate, did I spend $2,000 or $3,000 more than I should have? Who cares? Because the extra stress that I'm going to save if I only go find one extra opportunity, which is very likely that I will. So I'm on board with it. Where can people, if someone wants to get in touch with you, learn more about your programs, where do they find you, and what platforms do you use the most?
Sure. So they can find me on Instagram. It's Dan the Real Estate Man 1. I always say, because I lost the password to Dan the Real Estate Man, but it's Dan the Real Estate Man 1. On Facebook, it's Dan the Real Estate Man. Anybody that's interested in the BRRR group can go to bragginvestors.com. I also have a Facebook group. It's BRRR, just to like B dot, and it will pop up. Yeah, so that's where they can catch. Oh, and there is DanRealEstateMan.biz, which is my website where you can look up courses that I have, or if you're interested in doing any consultations, kind of like what we were talking about, then they can book there. They can also book through Instagram on the links.
Awesome. Are there any final thoughts or parting words that you would have for someone thinking about getting into multifamily investing today?
Yeah, I mean, I think that this is as good a time as any. This is not the sales pitch, it's just a reality. When people are fearful, that's when the opportunities are. But you have to educate yourself on what strategies make sense right now, right? Because even what made sense last year may not make the most sense now. So get educated and get as liquid as you can, either your own capital or someone else, so that you can take advantage of opportunities when they come up, because they will come up, they are coming up, and they will continue to come up.
I think very well and succinctly said. So, Dan, thanks again for taking the time to spend with me today. I hope that people have gotten value from this podcast. There was a lot of lessons, and please replay this, because I think following great advice today is even more important to make sure you don't end up being one of those people who will lose on a real estate deal. So thanks again for your time, and looking forward to doing this again at some point in the future.
All right, man. Thanks for having me, Ronnie. Appreciate it.